So, hello students. We will now be discussing the practical example related to risk-weighted asset and capital adequacy ratio. In the previous session, we already discussed different concepts of bank capital and the constituents of capital adequacy ratio. Let me also tell you that why the concept of capital adequacy ratio is very significant these days, because the concept of bank has become very prevalent in current socio-economic scenario in emerging economies like India, because the challenges at the international and national fronts are manifolds these time, considering the trade war, different wars which are taking places. Then there is a business rivalry is there, innovations are coming up, fintechs are coming up, and the customers' demand pattern is changing. In that situation, the bank has to have a sound capital adequacy. Therefore, we must understand the bank capital, different constituents of the capital, and risk-weighted asset. And based upon that, we should be able to understand the comparative positions of the bank based upon the given information and data. So, to make the context and situation more clear, I've taken this example to make you understand that by way of analyzing the basic information, how do we interpret that which bank is better and what are the areas of improvement in banks. So here there are two banks, Bank A and Bank B. Bank A has got equity share capital for 25 let's say crores. The figures are in crores. The Bank B has got the figures of 400 crores. Similarly, the reserves and surplus are given, the revaluation reserves are given. So when we talk about equity share capital, it is the part of tier 1 capital. When we talk about reserves and surplus, it is your tier 1 capital. Revaluation reserves and subordinated debts, they are tier 2 capital. So first three entries which are given, they forms the capital of the bank, constituting tier 1 and tier 2 capital. When we move ahead, there is a cash balance with RBI. So it is cash is the asset, balances in current account, that is also the asset, investment in government security, asset, investment is government approved security, that is also another category of asset. Different asset classes are given. MSME loans, that is also the asset. Then individual loans against the term deposit, that is also there. Then the housing loans and the CRE, which is the commercial real estate asset. So there are different asset classes. We have taken these asset classes which are more common and which are there in the balance sheet and P&L of most of the banks, right, to make the example more contemporary and comprehensive. So when you look at the position of Bank A and Bank B, you can clearly see that individual housing loan which is extended by Bank B is much more higher than Bank A. Similarly, cash balances with RBI, what the Bank B has, is much more higher than the Bank A. So it seems that the Bank B may be more sound because having more cash, having less risk. When you have more cash, it seems that the risk should be low. So let's try to understand this dilemma, whether the more cash will be resulting into lesser capital adequacy or higher capital adequacy. So this is the practical case. So when we move on to the next slide, it gives you the solution. So we have to simply multiply the assets with the risk weight. So here, if you see in the first column on the right hand side, we have got the risk weight, which we already discussed, which are there. It changes also based upon the regulatory requirements. Regulator changes it, and this forms the base of this calculation. Then the last two columns on the right hand side, where we are computing the risk weighted asset for Bank A and Bank B. So for cash, because the risk weight is 0, it is 0 all over. Now when we talk about balances in current account with other banks, so the risk weight is 0.2 and the value of the current accounts, whatever is the value in the current account, that is mentioned in the previous slide. So we can refer it from that slide. So when you multiply that value with 0.2, it will be 90 and 93.4. Investment is government securities, certain asset value is given into the question in the previous slide. So as the risk weight is 0, so risk weighted asset for bank A and bank B under this category will be 0. Similarly, investment in government approved securities is also 0 for both the banks because the risk weight is 0. And MSME loans, because it is guaranteed under certain schemes of the government, if the risk weight is 0 by the regulator, the risk weighted asset for both the banks would be 0. Then whatever are the loans and advances against, some guarantee mortgages like IVP, NSC, so the risk weight is 0, so risk weighted asset in this particular asset class category would be 0 for both the banks. Individual housing loans up to 75 lakhs only or less means the less risky housing loans. The risk weight is 50%. So whatever was the asset that is given, it will be reduced to 50% and it is mentioned in the column in the cell against bank A and bank B. Then when we move on to the commercial real estate, right? The other loans. So the risk weight is 100% risk. So whatever was the asset, that full asset will be brought down here in these two cells. So as it is very clear, it is very high for bank B. So when we add all these risk weighted asset, we will be having 8157 crores for bank A and 40480.4 CR for bank B. So this is about the computation of risk weighted asset. Similarly, we can compute tier 1 and tier 2 capital, as I already told in the previous, that was already given. So tier 1 capital was the disclosed reserves and paid up capital. Undisclosed reserves, revaluation reserve will be T2 capital. So they are also given here. Now when we add T1 and T2, this will become the total capital. And when we compute capital adequacy, which is T1 capital plus T2 capital divided by risk weighted asset. So the capital adequacy ratio for bank 1 is 61%, whereas for bank 2 it is 13.4%. So isn't it very interesting to understand that the bank B, having much more cash in the bank, is having less amount of capital adequacy considering the distribution of asset towards the risky asset is higher for bank B. So bank A and bank B both are analyzed in this manner. So we have compiled the findings on certain main points. So if we talk about risk exposure differences, we can see that the risk exposure of bank B is much more than that of bank A. Similarly, asset allocation impact, if we see, so there are zero risk weight asset there are there in the case of both the banks. However, if we compare the riskier assets, so they are more in case of bank B, which is mentioned over there, and it is also there in the previous slides. So towards the end, as we move ahead, let me tell you, there is the another very important point related to capital adequacy ratio. Bank A's capital adequacy, as we discussed, it was 61%, whereas for bank B it is for 13.42%. This shows that the bank A is relatively in a strong position in terms of capital adequacy as compared to bank B. But this also suggests that bank A is highly overcapitalized while bank B is closer to the capital adequacy limits. So we can say that the bank B is more aggressive in terms of asset utilization by maintaining the statutory requirement as well, whereas bank A is highly overcapitalized, leading to maybe the lesser amount of profit for bank A. So what the bank A is required to do, bank A's asset mix is conservative where the risk is low, but the profitability will also be compromised. So bank A has to focus on more aggressive asset utilization so that the loans are given, maybe some riskier loans as well, in order to optimize the profit. Whereas for bank B, it is also advised that maybe the loans should be given, but it should be given in the less riskier category because they are there at the borderline. 13-12 is the mandatory requirement. So with this, we understand that how can we compare the two banks on capital adequacy, and accordingly we can decide that which bank is better. And this is very important concept for us to understand the financial health of any bank. Thank you so much.